Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. My name is Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. We start with the successful negotiations in Istanbul. The supplies of grain from Ukraine will be resumed in hope of preventing a global hunger crisis. The UN and Turkey will monitor grain exports and imports along the Black Sea trade route. The seventh package of sanctions against Russia has gone into effect, which includes a gold embargo. Meanwhile, reports are coming from the battle front line of about 2,000 Russians surrounded in Vyskopila in the Kherson region. The Russians continue shelling Ukrainian cities. Yesterday, the missiles fell on Kharkiv, Slavyansk, and Kramatorsk. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that these barbaric attacks only mobilized the Ukrainian people to continue fighting. Today, the Russian army again fired rocket artillery at the Saltivka district in Kharkiv, hitting only civilian objects, residential building, commercial pavilions, and public transportation. At least 3 people are known to have been killed so far. The list of wounded includes more than 20 people. The occupiers also shelled the Slavyansk municipality in the Donbass and struck Kramatorsk with Iskanders. Each of these strikes only intensifies our desire to defeat the occupiers. It will happen eventually. Ukrainian soldiers, despite numerous obstacles and difficulties, do not lose their spirit. It is frightening to all of us, but we must do our duty not to give the enemy any opportunity to occupy our lands, and that we all return home alive and well. That is all. If not us, who? Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov thanked Poland for its support in the fight against the Russian occupier. For our freedom and yours, Warsaw, Wrocław, today in Poznań. With the support of our friend Michał Dworczyk, the third Polish city hosts the exhibition of Russian equipment destroyed by American weapons, a proof of Russian war crimes and at the same time, a symbol of the strength of the Ukrainian army and people. Meanwhile, today the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights announced that it has found evidence of Russian war crimes and crimes against humanity. On the basis of its activities, the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights found credible evidence that the military operations of the Russian Federation during the reporting period were characterized by a general disregard of the basic principles of distinction, proportionality, and security measures provided for by international humanitarian law, which can be equated with war crimes and crimes against humanity. War affects ordinary people first. Civilians often lose all their possessions. Putin is one thing, but do the Russians have their own minds or do they have chicken brains? What organ do they think with? How can we live next to such neighbors? How can we live peacefully with such a neighbor? It will take decades for us to heal the wounds they have inflicted on us. Farmers cannot harvest their crops. I am a farmer myself. Seeing my field is painful, but what can you do? People are afraid to go to the fields. In Istanbul, representatives of Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, and the United Nations signed an agreement under which Ukrainian grain is to be exported through ports in the Black Sea. Time will tell if this document will save the world from an unprecedented food crisis.
And let there be no doubt, this is an agreement for the world. It will bring relief for developing countries on the edge of bankruptcy and the most vulnerable people on the edge of famine.
Russia did not manage to win this war in a few days, and the siege of Kiev ended in a severe defeat for Russia. Ukrainians are defending themselves bravely thanks to great determination and support from Western countries. Only the solidarity of the free world can stop Moscow's imperial policy. People in the Polish capital of Warsaw headed out to water parks and public beaches yesterday as a heat wave which has swept Europe arrived in the city. At the Moczydło Water Park in western Warsaw, crowds of people packed onto grass to sunbathe and swim in outdoor pools. But while many enjoyed the hot weather, the serious consequences of the heat wave were on the minds of some. In recent days, low water levels in the Vistula River have revealed sandbanks, usually underwater. Just yesterday, we were crossing the bridge over the Vistula, and my children were looking out at the sandbanks that appeared in the middle of the river. Musician Tadeusz Frankiewicz plays his accordion. The sun is shining more and more, and you need to drink more water. It's also no good for the accordion, because in the sun, the wax inside can melt. It used to be different in the past. It was a bit cooler. People change, and the climate is changing too. On a Warsaw beach, tourist Tomek Gwoźdź gave his advice on keeping cool in the hot weather. You have to drink a lot of water, put on sunblock, and after that, a cool beer in the evening is also good.
Wieczorem chłodne piwko wypić.
Poland issued weather warnings for heat across almost all of the country as temperatures reached 35 degrees Celsius or 95 degrees Fahrenheit in Warsaw, with other Polish cities seeing highs of 38 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. A large wildfire broke out near the northwestern town of Brzesko, West Pomerania, the Onet news website reported. Firefighters told Onet that more than 50 hectares or 120 acres of fields had already burned and that the fire was moving towards a forest. Poland has struggled with wildfires during past heat waves. In 2020, bushfires threatened the country's Biomevieja National Park, home to some of Europe's last primeval forests. Cutting through Poland's Biomevieja Forest, the fence on the country's border with Belarus that is meant to stop the flow of migrants, is hampering the movement of the Biomevieja lynxes and could lead to their extinction. Before the border wall was completed in late June, about 40 of the lynxes inhabited the dense forest, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and an EU Nature 2000 special area of conservation. The lynxes are protected under Polish law. This wall is built in the backwoods where nature used to practically rule itself, and now there's just a wall. The access road is full of cars and a lot of rubbish, because those who build and guard the wall also litter. Thus, it is very sad for this whole forest. It is unclear how many of the lynxes stayed on the Polish side after the barrier was built, but the population is likely to be divided between the two sides. The Mammal Research Institute at the Polish Academy of Sciences, which monitors the forest animals, said lynxes used areas on both sides of the border. They had areas on both sides of the border and functioned as one population. Now, dividing the forest into two separate ecosystems will cause the population of these animals to be separated. In the case of lynx, it is so important that we already know that this population was partially isolated. It was characterized by a very low genetic variation, the lowest among European populations. We also know that such barriers that are created here in the Biomevieja Forest, that is to say, a metal structure that has gaps, can also cause animal mortality, because some animals may try to squeeze through these gaps between the elements of this barrier, and hence might die. Poland's border guard says the fence does not constitute an obstacle for animals, as it has 24 gates for large animals to go through if needed, which will enable continuous migration, and pointed to a 1980s fence on the Belarusian side that had already changed the animals' movement patterns. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But from me, it's have a great weekend.